Dear listeners, before starting the story, I ask you to subscribe to the channel under this video. Your subscription motivates me to make quality content for you. I also ask you to share your opinion about the story in the comments, that's all. Enjoy listening. Part 1. A Stable Life. My name is Mark Thompson, and I've spent the better part of my 45 years in the bustling city of Chicago. It's a city that never sleeps, with its towering skyscrapers, historic architecture, and the constant hum of activity. I've always loved the energy of Chicago, and it's where I built my life, both personally and professionally. I met Laura when I was 32, and she was 30. We were both a bit older than the typical newlyweds, but I think that's what made our relationship work so well in the beginning. We were mature, knew what we wanted, and had both experienced enough of life to appreciate each other. Laura was beautiful, with blonde hair and a smile that could light up the darkest room. She worked as a marketing executive for a big firm downtown, and I was an engineer at a tech company. We got married a year after meeting, in a small ceremony with close friends and family at the Chicago Botanic Garden. It was a perfect day, and I remember thinking how lucky I was to have found someone like Laura. We bought a house in Lincoln Park, a charming neighborhood that was both close to the city's heartbeat and quiet enough for us to raise a family. Life was good. We had 2 kids, Jack and Emma, and we settled into a comfortable routine. Laura's career was thriving, and I was doing well at my job. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but we always managed to work through them. I thought we were solid. I thought we were happy. Part 2. The First Signs. Things started to change when Laura got a promotion about 2 years ago. She became the head of her department, which came with a lot of responsibilities and late nights. At first, I was proud of her. She had worked hard for this, and she deserved it. But as time went on, I noticed she was spending more and more time at work and less time at home. I tried to be understanding. I took on more responsibilities with the kids and around the house, hoping it would make things easier for her. But the more I did, the more distant she seemed to become. She started coming home late, sometimes not until after the kids were in bed. When I asked her about it, she would get defensive, saying it was just the nature of her job and that I needed to trust her. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But there were little things that didn't add up. She was constantly on her phone, texting someone late into the night. She started dressing differently, more provocatively, even when she said she was just going to the office. And then there were the business trips. She started going on them more frequently, often at the last minute, and they always seemed to last longer than she initially said they would. Part 3. Discovering the Truth. The moment of truth came on a cold November night. Laura had told me she was going to New York for a few days for a conference. She left early in the morning, kissing me goodbye and telling me she'd be back by the end of the week. That evening, after putting the kids to bed, I was cleaning up the kitchen when her phone buzzed on the counter. She had forgotten it in her rush to leave. I knew I shouldn't have looked at it. I knew it was an invasion of her privacy, but my gut was telling me something was wrong, and I couldn't shake the feeling. I picked up her phone and saw a message from someone named Dan. It was a name I didn't recognize, and the message was brief. "Can't wait to see you tonight." My heart sank. I scrolled through the messages and saw a thread of conversations going back months. They were flirty, intimate, and often explicit. It was clear that this wasn't just a professional relationship. Laura had been seeing this man behind my back for months, maybe even longer. Part 4. Confrontation. I didn't sleep that night. My mind was racing, replaying every moment of the past few months, and wondering how I had missed the signs. The next day, I called Laura's office to confirm she was at the conference. Her assistant told me she was, but when I asked for specifics, she hesitated and said Laura wasn't due back until the following week. It confirmed my worst fears. Laura was lying to me. I spent the next few days in a daze, going through the motions for the kids' sake, but feeling like my world was falling apart. When Laura returned, I confronted her. I didn't shout or get angry. I simply told her I knew about Dan and that I had seen the messages. She looked shocked at first, then angry. She tried to deny it, but when I showed her the phone, she broke down and admitted everything. She had met Dan at a work event, and things had escalated quickly. She claimed it was just a fling, that it didn't mean anything, and that she still loved me. But her words felt hollow. I couldn't look at her the same way. The trust that had been the foundation of our marriage was shattered, and I didn't know how to rebuild it. Part 5. The Aftermath. We tried to make it work. We went to couples therapy, and Laura promised to end things with Dan and focus on our family. For a while, it seemed like we might be able to salvage our marriage, but the damage was done. Every time she looked at her phone, every time she had to work late, I felt a surge of suspicion and anger. I couldn't live like that, and deep down, I don't think Laura could either. A few months after the confrontation, I found out that she had continued seeing Dan despite her promises. That was the final straw. I told her I wanted a divorce. She didn't argue. In some ways, I think she was relieved. We both knew our marriage was over. Part 6. Picking up the pieces. The divorce was messy and painful. We fought over custody of the kids, the house, and everything else that had been part of our life together. In the end, we agreed to joint custody, and I moved into a small apartment not far from our old neighborhood. It was hard, starting over at 45, but I didn't have a choice. The kids took it hard. They were old enough to understand that something was wrong, but not old enough to grasp the full extent of it. I tried to be there for them, to reassure them that both their parents loved them, but it was difficult when I was barely holding myself together. Laura and I barely spoke after the divorce was finalized. She stayed in the house with the kids, and I saw them every other weekend and on Wednesday nights. It wasn't the life I had envisioned, but it was the best I could do under the circumstances. Part 7. Moving forward. As the months turned into years, I slowly started to rebuild my life. I focused on my job, throwing myself into my work as a way to distract from the pain. I made new friends, joined a gym, and even started dating again, though nothing serious. The wounds from my marriage were still too fresh. Laura moved on quickly. She and Dan got together officially not long after our divorce was finalized. It hurt to see her so happy with the man who had destroyed our marriage. But I tried not to dwell on it. It wasn't healthy, and I needed to focus on my own healing. I found solace in my children. They were my anchor. The reason I got up in the morning and kept going even when things seemed bleak. We created new routines, new traditions, and I did my best to be a good father to them. Part 8. The Unexpected Twist. Just when I thought I had my life back on track, fate dealt me another blow. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, and I was at the park with Jack and Emma. They were playing on the swings, laughing and carefree, when I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer it, but something told me I should. The voice on the other end was one I hadn't heard in years. Dan. He sounded panicked, almost desperate. He told me that Laura had been in an accident and was in the hospital. He didn't have many details, just that it was serious, and I needed to get there as soon as possible. My mind raced as I drove to the hospital, the kids in the back seat, oblivious to the turmoil inside me. When we arrived, I found Dan in the waiting room, looking pale and shaken. He told me that Laura had been hit by a car while crossing the street. She was in surgery, and the doctors weren't sure if she would make it. Part 9. The Final Blow. I told him to stay away from me and my kids, and he reluctantly agreed. He looked as devastated as I felt, but I couldn't find it in me to care. All I could think about was how I was going to tell Jack and Emma that their mother was gone. The next few days were a blur of grief and logistics. I had to plan the funeral, notify friends and family, and figure out how to help my children through the hardest time of their lives. My parents flew in from Arizona to help, and Laura's family, who lived nearby, were a constant presence. Despite everything, I felt completely alone. Part 10. The Funeral. The funeral was held at a small church in our neighborhood. It was a cold, gray day, fitting for the occasion. I stood by the casket, holding Jack and Emma's hands as people filed past, offering their condolences. I don't remember most of what they said. I was in a daze, going through the motions. When it was time for the eulogy, I struggled to find the right words. How do you sum up a person's life in just a few minutes? How do you convey the complexity of a relationship that had been both beautiful and deeply painful? I talked about Laura's love for our children, her dedication to her work, and the good times we had shared. I left out the betrayal and the hurt. It didn't seem right to speak ill of the dead, especially in front of Jack and Emma. Part 11, Coping with Loss. After the funeral, life felt like it was in slow motion. I went through the motions of daily life, but everything seemed muted. The kids returned to school and I went back to work, but nothing felt normal. Every time I walked past Laura's office or saw her empty chair at the dinner table, the pain hit me all over again. Jack and Emma struggled too. Jack, usually so energetic and talkative, became withdrawn. He spent hours in his room, playing video games or reading, anything to escape reality. Emma, on the other hand, became clingy and anxious. She wanted constant reassurance that I wasn't going to leave her too. We started seeing a grief counselor, which helped a little. Talking about Laura and our feelings made the pain more bearable, but it was still there, a constant presence. Some days were better than others, but it felt like we were all just treading water, trying not to drown in our grief. Part 12. A New Beginning? Months passed, and the initial shock and pain of Laura's death began to fade, replaced by a dull ache that never really went away. I threw myself into work, trying to fill the void with projects and deadlines. It helped, but only a little. I missed Laura despite everything, and the guilt of that feeling gnawed at me. One day, about 6 months after Laura's death, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Dan. I hesitated before opening it, unsure if I even wanted to hear what he had to say. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me, and I tore open the envelope. Part 13. The Letter. In the letter, Dan apologized for everything that had happened. He said he never meant to hurt me or my children, and that he regretted the affair deeply. He explained that he had fallen in love with Laura, but he never intended for things to end the way they did. He asked for my forgiveness, and said he was leaving Chicago to start over somewhere new. Reading his words brought back all the anger and pain I had tried to bury. I didn't want to forgive him. I wanted to hate him, to blame him for everything that had gone wrong. But as I sat there holding the letter, I realized that my anger wasn't helping anyone. It wasn't bringing Laura back, and it wasn't making me feel any better. Part 14. Finding Peace. Forgiving Dan wasn't easy, and I'm not sure I ever fully did. But I made a conscious decision to let go of the anger. I needed to move forward, for my sake and for my children's. I focused on creating new memories with Jack and Emma, finding joy in the small moments, and rebuilding our lives one step at a time. We started taking trips together, exploring new places and trying new activities. We went camping in Wisconsin, visited museums in Chicago, and even took a road trip to Florida. These trips became a way for us to heal, to find a new normal without Laura. Part 15. A Chance Encounter. About a year after Laura's death, I met someone new. Her name was Rachel, and she was a teacher at Emma's school. We met at a parent-teacher conference, and something just clicked. Rachel was kind, understanding, and patient. She knew about my past and was willing to take things slow. Our relationship was different from what I had with Laura. It was built on trust and mutual respect, and it grew slowly over time. Rachel became a part of our lives, not as a replacement for Laura, but as someone new to share our journey with. Part 16. Moving Forward. Rachel and I have been together for over a year now. It hasn't always been easy, blending our lives and dealing with the ghosts of the past, but we've made it work. Jack and Emma have grown to love her, and she's been a wonderful support to all of us. I've learned a lot through all of this. I've learned about the depths of my own strength, about the importance of forgiveness, and about the power of love and resilience. Life didn't turn out the way I expected, but in many ways, it's made me stronger and more appreciative of the good things I do have. Part 17. Reflection. As I sit here reflecting on the past few years, I realize how far we've come. The pain of Laura's betrayal and death will always be a part of me, but it no longer defines me. I've built a new life for myself and my children, one filled with love, hope, and new possibilities. Chicago, with all its ups and downs, has been the backdrop for this journey. It's a city of resilience, much like me. And as I look out at the skyline, I feel a sense of peace. I've made it through the darkest times, and I've come out the other side stronger and more determined than ever. My story is one of betrayal and loss, but also of redemption and hope. It's a reminder that even when life knocks you down, you have the strength to get back up and keep going. And that's what I'll continue to do. For myself, for my children, and for the memory of the woman I once loved. We'll keep moving forward, one step at a time, finding our way through the shadows and into the light. Part 18. A new chapter. Life is unpredictable, and sometimes it throws you curveballs you never saw coming. But through all the pain and hardship, I've learned that it's also full of unexpected blessings. Rachel and I recently got engaged, and we're planning a small wedding for next summer. The kids are excited, and for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful about the future. We're building a new home together, one that honors the past but looks forward to the future. It's not always easy, and there are days when the pain resurfaces, but we face it together as a family. Jack and Emma are thriving, and I'm so proud of the resilient, compassionate young people they're becoming. Part 19. Conclusion. In the end, my story is one of resilience and hope. It's a testament to the power of forgiveness, the strength of the human spirit, and the importance of love and family. Life didn't turn out the way I planned, but I've learned to embrace the journey with all its twists and turns. Chicago will always be my home, the place where I faced my greatest challenges and found my greatest strength. It's a city that embodies resilience, and in many ways, it reflects my own journey. I've been through the darkest of times, but I've emerged stronger, more compassionate, and ready to embrace whatever comes next. So here I am, moving forward with hope and determination, ready to face whatever the future holds. My story is far from over, and I'm excited to see what the next chapter brings. With Rachel by my side and my children as my inspiration, I know that whatever happens, we'll face it together with love, strength, and resilience. And that, in the end, is what truly matters.